Yes, Spurs fans, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur here. We have a panel of Sam, Jerome, and Dermatron. Dave is out sick, and Billy just couldn't make it tonight, but I'm also sick, so it really is that season, if you can tell. So everybody stay indoors, don't see anyone, don't ever go outside. Try to avoid all social meetings because it seems like the flu, the colds, everything is going around. I'm dropping vitamin C tablets like Spurs are dropping points in the Premier League this season. But we're going to try to make our best with the panel show tonight. We have some spicy questions towards the end, but we also have some other interesting questions, I think, around just sort of where we're at in the Premier League and some of the upcoming games. Because, by the way, the February schedule, I don't even know if we're going to salvage more than 2-3 points in the February fixture period. So it's probably all about Spurs trying to get as many wins in January as possible to sort of give ourselves that false sense of confidence for maybe what's ahead in the February. But Jerome, good to have you with us. Dermot, good to have you with us. Dermot, I'll just start with you, just asking, how are you? How are you since the fan show? Hopefully everything's all good.
Yeah, everything's fine. I'm just getting ready for tomorrow. Just looking that Bournemouth are not in great sort of form, so we should turn up and get 3 points tomorrow. But we also know Dr. Tottenham like to turn up once in a while just to put a few spanner in the works. But look, I'm going for 3 points tomorrow. But yeah, looking forward to doing this. This is a show I always watch. Always enjoy watching Billy and Sam put you and Dave under a little bit of pressure. So tonight, I want to see now tonight, put Sam under a bit of pressure and see what happens tonight. But thanks for having me on.
You can go hard on Sam. Just go easy on me, Dermo. I'm under the weather.
I'll go easy on you.
Yeah, I will do. Jerome, good to have you with us, sir. I mean, Dermot's right. Bournemouth are in terrible form. But to be funny, I feel like anytime I watch Bournemouth, they look quite good, but they actually just keep losing. So hopefully we can sort of get the same.
Yeah, hopefully we can get the same against Bournemouth. But yeah, we'll see how things goes because to me, I have a feeling that we might stick up the place. It might be like a boring Jojo 1-1. So let's see. Hopefully you get a 3 points. That's all I'm asking for.
We have been the masters of the draws, to be fair, under Thomas Frank, where I felt like under the previous manager, you'd be hard-pressed to find any draw that we either had. It was either win or lose. Good to see some people in the house that are joining us. We have Fantasy McShane, Binny Guy, Logan THFC, Scotty Heinem, Stefan Blois. Stefan, sad that we didn't have you on the fan show yesterday. He's saying, big up, guys. All our players are internationals and approved with their previous clubs and international teams that they are good enough players. Put them in a system and you'll see a difference. Well, we will get on to that later, Stefan. That is the big question of the evening, is how good is this squad? And is Thomas Frank, if the squad is as bad as people say it is he technically overachieving if we're going to go by that logic where we are in the Premier League table? But Sam, I want to have a little catch up with you because, of course, I didn't get to really chat to you about the Sunderland game. Just to sort of recap that game, did you feel like it was actually a good performance despite the fact that Spurs dropped points? And just sort of to add on to that, if you thought it was a decent enough performance, if Frank had more performances like that this season against Sunderland, would there maybe be more patience for him right now?
I think that my takeaway from that game, at least from the first half, was that I saw some semblance of what will turn into, I think, Frank will, if you can even call it that, for one half. I think that we started well. I think that Tell's shot within the first minute really set the tempo for us. It was like, okay, like we've come to play. And I did turn to my brother at one point to say to him, like, oh my God, like, are we gonna win the first home game of the year? Is it gonna be like that? And then, I don't know, I mean, obviously, Kudus going off was quite a big blow. Not necessarily that I thought that he was playing well. I actually thought he was playing pretty terribly. But him going off meant that Muani had to come on. And then I was looking at the bench, like, who is actually on the bench to come on other than like a Bergvall and a Palhinha, which he obviously did end up doing. And I guess that sub of Muani forced him into giving minutes to Scarlett, who you probably wouldn't have seen otherwise. Second half, I don't think it was as bad as people are making out. It definitely was a massive drop-off. But I don't think there was really much of the game where we were dominated. There was obviously periods where Sunderland had quite a lot of the ball. But I didn't really feel in that much of a threat, except for obviously the Romero, two mistakes, one that almost led to a goal and one that led to a goal. Obviously, it felt like the goal was coming because they were starting to really put us on and we were sitting back too much. But again, I think that kind of goes back a little bit to the fact that he had, people are saying he went very defensive, but I think that he had so many attackers not available for him to choose from that it was difficult. And I think that we reverted to type a bit in the second half, and again in the first half, we created chances for ourselves and just can't hit the target.
Yeah.
Which is the frustration for him. I feel like, yes, Frank is. You said about, is he overachieving based on how bad?
Well, we'll get on to that later. Yeah, that's the main question of the evening. I was just sort of wanted to ask you about just sort of what you thought of the game, because I agree with your sentiment that second half I don't think was as bad as people said it was. I actually feel like overall it was a performance where Spurs deserved to win, and I felt that way a lot under maybe previous seasons where it was like, yeah, I felt like we played enough to win, we just didn't get the win. And I wonder if with that then comes more patience, essentially. But I'm not sure if we've been able to say that much with Frank this season, to be honest. Most of the time, it kind of felt like we deserved to lose this season.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, I think it's the problems of Frank is exacerbated by the fact that our players either can't hit the target or they can't consistently make 5-yard passes.
Yeah.
And I think that every time it looks like we might make an attack, it breaks down because there's a poor touch or a poor pass somewhere, or you're playing the ball to Richarlison, who does have some pros, but one of his many, negatives is the fact that he just can't beat a man. If you play in the ball on the last defender, unless he's got like a 5-yard head start, you can be pretty certain he's getting caught up to it. People make jokes about Xerxes being slow. They say that it looks like he runs in Timberland boots, and I feel like Richarlison very much has that. He looks so heavy-footed, and the fact that he's scoring goals, I think, is a plus for Frank, but the fact that Frank is having to persevere with him, I think, is an ultimate negative. Obviously, he could be starting Moani, so whether or not you think Moani should be starting, you can have your criticisms of Frank. I understand both sides of it, really, because Moani's not scoring, but he's kind of the anti-Brennan Johnson at the moment, doing everything off the ball, everything with the ball except for putting it in the back of the net, whereas Johnson was just, putting it in the back of the net. And I feel like the fact that he has to keep playing Richarlison is because he's scoring, and unfortunately, it's not really helping the team overall.
I mean, I would make the case that you're right. Colomwani's almost a bit opposite to Brennan Johnson, and then Richarlison, at least, is probably this year's Brennan Johnson, in that he almost is doing nothing else but scoring. It's like a guy that you look at his stats and you'd be like, damn, what a player. He's actually carrying this team this season. But then when you actually watch Richarlison, you're like, how does this guy have the numbers that he has? And I would say the same of Brennan Johnson, where you look at the stats, you're impressed, but then when you actually watch the guy, you're almost a little bit scratching your head as to how.
And the crazy thing is, Jack, he could actually have more goals than what he's got.
Yeah,
he's missed loads of chances.
Yeah, but he's the only one, sadly, that has been managing to put it in the net, which is the common argument we made with Johnson as well. So fair play to Richarlison for just morphing himself into a Brazilian Brennan Johnson. But also, I agree with you that in terms of just lastly on that game, people are criticizing us going more defensive with the substitutions. Thomas Frank, to be fair to him, he kind of went with one of the most attacking lineups he probably could have gone with in the first place, really. He played Odegaard, Tell, Kudus, and Richarlison. That's probably a lineup we haven't really seen before, if you ask me. He went with Gray and Bentancur to begin with, right? So it just seemed like that was kind of the most attacking lineup he could have gone for. If any of the substitutions you make after that are almost automatically going to be defensive, especially with the injuries that we have. So I agree with you on that point.
He didn't make the sub of Palhinha and Bergvall until the 72nd minute. And I feel like the discourse on social media makes you think that, from the second half, whistle went, we just sat everyone behind the ball. I don't think that was the case. I think the fact that we missed so many chances meant that Sunderland could get back in the game, and they knew that the more they pressed us, the more chances they were likely going to get based on our form over the last couple of years. And unfortunately, they did. I feel like people overlook the fact that Sunderland were much better in the second half, rather than just us being really, really bad.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, actually. And also that seems like an appropriate time to make, even if you consider them defensive substitutions, 1-0 up, 15 minutes to go, really kind of around the time that you start to consider that sort of outcome. So again, it was one of those games. I've been heavily criticizing Frank a lot. did not feel like one of the games that I could really actually put that much of the blame on him. Just want to welcome some people in, and then we'll push on to some of these other questions. Spurs King saying, talk to Frank helps you quit drugs, whereas Thomas Frank makes you want to take drugs. Thanks for being a member of the channel, Spurs King. Playful Spurs, Paul Connor's in the house. Good to see you, Paul. Hopefully everything's all right with you. Shemi Tam is in here as well. He said, hope you're all good today, even with the news about Kudus only happens to Spurs, especially after selling Brennan Johnson. As much as I was happy to see the guy go, it just really shows, just our luck this season. Shem10. Tyler's in the house. Do appreciate your support, sir. Limpy Down Under. Maybe he's, even though I'm on Sam's page, he's disagreeing with us. He was saying it was awful after the subs. That's down to the tactics, he says. Tom THFC is in here as well. Good to see you, Tom. Hopefully everything was all right with you. Good to see Artist T, AK Shegs, the one and only Wayne Bonner. Good evening, Jack and Dave and Dermot and the panel and everyone in the chat. Hope you're all well. We need improvements all through the team and the club itself. The painful rebuild begins. How many times have I been doing these streams and we're talking about rebuilds? Wayne Bonner, it's becoming exhausting. I don't even know what a rebuild means anymore at this stage. But let's move on to some of the other questions here. Our next matches are Bournemouth away, Aston Villa in the Cup at home, and then Burnley away, with Dortmund and Frankfurt being the Champions League games. If you didn't know, Dermot, we have a very, very difficult February schedule. I mean, it's Man United, Man City. We have Arsenal in there as well. Like, it's not going to be easy reading for us Spurs fans in terms of fixtures. And it kind of seems like that these next 4 or 5 games for Thomas Frank, you could argue, are almost must wins for him in order to salvage some type of confidence going into the rest of the season.
It is. I mean, the game tomorrow night's vital to get us back to some sort of winning ways. So we do have good away record. The Villa game on Saturday is absolutely vital. I mean, that could make or break our season. If we go out the FA Cup, then what we got to play for? A Conference League place. Because I think that's what we're probably looking at the end of the season. Maybe Europa League if we're lucky. So I think Saturday's game is more vital than the Champions League game, which I think if you're qualified top 8, brilliant. If we're going to a playoff, then so be it. But I think we've made our own bed in that competition. But Saturday, for me, is absolutely vital for Thomas Frank. Because I feel if we go out of the FA Cup on Saturday, we're not going to win the Champions League. What else has he got to play for this season bar getting into a European place? Which, in our current form and our current squad, I don't think we're capable of doing that.
Yeah.
So I think then the gloves will be off. I think while we're still in the FA Cup, you have to keep Frank in because we're still in the competition we can win. And then you build into February, and then it's even tougher games. Then if he loses one of them games, then what the Spurs do? If say we lose to Arsenal, what did the Spurs board do then? Did they say, well, thank you for your time, Thomas, we're going to cut our losses and bring somebody in, bring an interim for the rest of the season and start again in the summer? I don't know. I just think Saturday is make or break. That for me is the main game. Forget February. Saturday for me is make or break for Thomas Frank. If he doesn't win that, then I think he's on a slippery slope.
Are you kind of looking at these next 5-6 games, Jerome, as make or break for Thomas Frank? I think he's already been broken, but if we're going to give him another chance, I feel like these games are make or break for him. He has an opportunity to give our cup chances some sort of hope and optimism, like Dermot said. If he wins against Dortmund, we potentially could secure automatic qualification for the Champions League. And then it looks like with the February Premier League games, I don't even know if we're going to get more than 3 points, in that fixture period. So these are really crucial games for him coming up.
Yeah, definitely crucial games for him in terms of moving forward with his club. Because, again, like Dermot said, the games against Villa, it is definitely a make or break for him, because if we're out of the FA Cup, there's nothing else for us to play for. We're not like Champions League. We're not going to win the Champions League, but it's just the FA Cup that's left. So, and I would say we are just very unlucky to go play against a informed Villa, even though we lost 4-1 to Arsenal. They are an informed team, and it's going to be a very, very difficult game. And I'm pretty sure they'll be up for it as well, because we know we can be in this competition as well. So I don't know. If we lose to Villa, I don't know where we move forward this season. That means everything is off. That season will be a write-off already, because the only thing we'll have to play for will be the league. So, and just survive in there and just try to get a European place. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how things goes. But yeah, like you said, February, February is going to be a nightmare. So all of those games coming is definitely must win. He needs to get points everywhere he can, especially in the league. He needs to get points. Like tomorrow is a very, very important game. If he loses that game, I don't know. I think that would be like the foreshadowing of his demise, because he really needs to start getting point in the league. I know people are saying that it's like, oh, we're only 6.2 top five, but the way we are going, it seems to me it's really hard for us to even get where do we get those 6 points to get close to the top five. So yeah, we'll see how things goes.
Yeah, I mean, beating Bournemouth would at least give us that false sense of hope, maybe for the the later games. If we don't beat Bournemouth, I can't even try to, in the best of my happy clapping abilities and superpowers, to try to rationalize us, winning the rest of these games. But Sam, I know I usually speak in hyperboles, and I'm always a little bit hyperbolic, but I would make the case that the rest of these games in January are, in a sense, kind of must wins for Thomas Frank, considering the very ugly fixture schedule in February, which is Man City, Man United, Newcastle, and Arsenal, like all teams that would be a tough ask for him, especially with how this season's been going, to pick up points against.
So you said, when you asked Dermot the question, you asked him about, is it a make or break for Thomas Frank, although you already thought he's been broken?
Yeah. Well, I'm giving him another life because the club are giving him one, it seems.
Yeah. So this is it, right? I feel like you have to look at it in two parts. He's already been found guilty in the court of public opinion, if you go off Twitter, right? It seems like even the moderate fans, myself included, are kind of like, how do you keep backing something when there isn't results, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, I feel like you've got the club, and I don't think they've made their mind up. But I think that what Jerome was saying about Aston Villa, I think that's probably the most important game of his career so far at Spurs. Because you're right, if he does lose that, then the league's already written off, and the chances are we'll probably go out of the Champions League, early in the knockout rounds. Obviously, I hope that we don't, and you never know. We didn't think we'd get to the Champions League final. It could happen, but the chances are it won't. And I feel like, the if he can get through that, one, I think that people will be like, okay, he's beaten a big team and a team that are in form, as you said, Jerome. Other than the fact that they lost to Arsenal recently, they were like 11 games or something on like a win run or something like that. They went from and I kind of use them as a bit of an example for us right now. Like, they went from the bottom three, having not scored a goal until like game week 5 or 6, against Sunderland, who had 10 men from the 30th minute, and they drew 1-1. And basically from that point, they've gone from the bottom 3 to the top 3. I'm not saying that, it's likely that we'd do that either, but the fact that we're still it's like 6 points off the top 5 or something, it is only a couple wins and results going your way. So I'm reluctant to write him off in that regard. Obviously, I do feel that the games are super boring. I'm not really sure what exactly he's bringing to the team. But then, as I said before, I feel like the fact that the players can't pass 5 yards is also a massive, massive problem. And Dermot was saying, we're probably wanting to finish between 8th and 5th. That's where probably Spurs fans would be aiming to finish in the league. And we have not got the squad for that. And we're not in the form either, where in Ange's first season, he had those 10 games to basically fall back on when things weren't going well. Not necessarily in terms of like a reputation, I just mean points-wise, whereas we're not picking up points. And, we've got a hard February coming up, as you say. We've actually played quite a lot of easy teams.
Yeah.
Easier, because there aren't really easy teams in the Premier League. I think that's the problem. With Brentford, if he loses that game, I don't think that they would sack him, but That
Bournemouth.
paired with that paired with the Aston Villa game, losing those two, I think that's a recipe for disaster. And the fact that
Okay.
Bournemouth are 11 games without a win, I think just shows that they're also missing their talisman in Semenyo, right? He tore us apart in the first game, so it's a redemption for Frank to win that game away from home as well. I know obviously our home form is the issue, but to win it away from home is still impressive. But if he doesn't, then I feel like the writing could start to be on the walls, and you'll see club signings coming in rather than his signings.
So using Sam's words there, Jerome, could you look at it more short term that he kind of has to win against Bournemouth and he probably has to get a result against Villa in the cup in order to not let the
Look,
mass crash out from the fan base, which has already been kind of boiling as it is?
to be honest, I have a feeling we're not going to lose against Bournemouth, but I don't think we're going to win either. I think it's going to end up with a draw. So we might just nick a 1-1 draw or something against Bournemouth. I don't feel like we have it in us to beat them. That's the issue, because the way we're playing, it's more like we are going to give them a lot of respect, and we might just go there and just make it like a draw, a 0-0 draw, a 1-1 draw, or something like that. But I don't feel like we might lose this game, because look, we went to a Brentford, even though it was a really boring game, it's like even they were not very good. It's like Brentford are very dangerous at home, and we still managed to get like a 0-0 draw against them. So I believe we might do the same with Bournemouth. But if we lose that game, like I said, I think it might be, and he loses to Villa for the FA Cup, then I think it would be the writing on the wall, like Sam said already. So it would be a really, really bad start. Yeah.
You could spin it the other way, where Brentford seem to want to play everyone right now. They're playing so well, probably except us, because that was one of the worst games of football you could ever imagine. And maybe Brentford actually fear us more than any other team at the minute. Trinidad saying everyone needs to chill out. The Frank Engine master plan is to go one better than Ange and finish 16th and concentrate all efforts to win the Champions League. Respect to the panel. Great comment from Trinidad. If anyone wants to stop us at any point, feel free to ask a question, or if you want to support the channel in any way, consider becoming a member or throwing a super chat. But let's move on to one of the big injuries. Spurs made a mistake, or have Spurs made a mistake, Dermo, in the timing of selling Brennan Johnson, considering Mohamed Kudus's long injury that we just found out about. If they wanted to sell Johnson in the first place, should they have already maybe had a replacement lined up? And maybe should Frank as well consider Odebear on the right now as maybe the fill-in for the time being?
I think Odebear on the right, yeah. I think on the selling Brennan Johnson, this shows why this club is so disorganized and why these owners, so-called 2.0 owners and the Lewis family, are so disorganized. Personally, I think there's still big battles within the boardroom. I don't think there's any organization there whatsoever. I also feel when it comes to Thomas Frank and transfers, it's like nobody wants to do any work. They keep putting out PR, we're looking for players, we're busy, we're doing this. But where's the evidence of doing anything? And to sell a player and have no backup to bring a player in to replace him, it's just, and then Kudus gets injured, it's so Tottenham. It is so much Tottenham. On the other hand, you've got a player that's not going to play for Thomas Frank, who doesn't seem within his plans. You're looking at 35 million now, or even less in January. I think Tottenham took the only option they had was to take the money now and take the 35 million. But again, no plan, no organization. And I just feel this is another recipe for disaster. 1st of January, we should have been there ready to, if we're going to sell Johnson, we know he's going to Palace. Right, 2nd of January, let's sell him, but let's announce a new signing coming in straight away, like for like. And we're now trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and trying to fit another player who plays on the left. Well, okay, you can play in the right. We're going to make you a right midfielder, winger now. It's just typical Tottenham and typical owners, typical Enoch, typical Lang. Nobody knows what Paratici's doing. It's just absolutely, it's so frustrating. It really is so. West Ham have got 2 players in already this window, and we're still trying to get our first. I mean, West Ham are crapper than us, and they've got 2 players in. They could be sacking their manager tonight. But they're more organised than us in the transfer market. Enoch needs to wake up. Paratici needs to wake up. Bland needs to wake up, and Thomas Frank needs to put his foot down. You know, it's just this new ownership. They're proving to me what I've been saying. It's the same old ownership, same old shite, same old talk. We're going to talk big, but we're not going to back it up. Unless they bring in Rodrigo, which is never going to happen, or they bring in some decent player, this is another wasted window. Again, where we need to be improving the squad. We need to be getting better players in. And if they are going to sack Thomas Frank, as Jerome says, then they need to start bringing in club players. Tottenham need to pick a philosophy. This is Tottenham. Today is to do. We're going to play the Tottenham way, which is it is a push and run. That's Tottenham style. And bring in players that suit our philosophy. And then a manager has to come in and buy a manager that fits that philosophy. And then you're not trying to buy players for another manager who doesn't like him. It's just we are so disorganized. It's so frustrating. It really is. You're on mute, Jack.
Thanks, Dermo. From push and run to pump it long or get it launched and run. You know, that's now the new tactic under Frank.
It is.
But Jerome, I mean, was selling Brennan Johnson a mistake considering the timing of it? I'm not sure if selling Johnson exactly was a mistake, but maybe the timing of it with this Kudus injury, and then also as well with the fact that there's no rumors of any replacement being lined up yet.
Look, the timing of it is just bad luck with Kudus injury. And selling Johnson, look, it was the right time to sell him. If it was not in the plan of Frank, then what's the point of having somebody just sitting there and warming the bench? Selling him at 35 million, yep, that was a good deal. For me, it's a good deal that we sold him. But the only issue is there's no replacement in line, as usual, because again, Son is gone. We have no left winger to replace him, no one of quality to replace him. And it's the same thing with Brennan Johnson. We sold him, but we got no replacement in line. And you could already know things would be really bad this transfer window, especially before it's even open. We can hear Paratici is leaving, is going to Fiorentina. That would have literally just thrown the spanner into the whole thing, because the main guy who's supposed to be looking at our transfer is now leaving. So what does that tell us? What does that literally tell us? That something is going to go really bad for this transfer window, especially if with the hire, there's already sounds like there's issues with Paratici leaving, going to the bottom of the league, Fiorentina. It's like, come on, something is definitely not right going up with the higher ups. And yeah, let's see. Let's see how we go, if we can actually find somebody now, because apparently we are now looking for a right winger for another attacking player with Kudus injury. So yeah, let's see what we'll bring up. But to be honest, who would want to join us right now? It's unless we go and find another kid or something like that, but I can't see any quality player that would really want to join us. But we'll see what they come up with, but don't have much hope, unfortunately.
People are even joking in the chat, you know, Sean Maddox, good to see you, Sean, wants Mikey Moore to come back. And then someone replied to Sean saying, why would you bring him back to this mess? So even maybe our own loan players don't even want to come back to their parent club. To you, Sam, I mean, do you agree with Jerome that it was just bad timing, or not bad timing, just actually unluckiness, not as much bad timing? I know a lot of people, journalists, including Alistair Gold, said it was terrible timing with the selling of Brennan Johnson, or is it just unluckiness? I'm actually not too sure where I fall on this, because maybe they should have had a replacement lined up if they were to sell him this soon into the window.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the distinction is. I don't think anyone, I don't think there's anyone who seriously disagrees with the sale of Brennan in terms of his actual ability for the team. obviously, in hindsight, you can look back at it and say, well, now Kudus is injured. Brennan could have easily stepped in, probably done better than what Kudus has done the last 3-4 weeks. But the thing is, I feel like this is, Dermot said it. We've now sold our top scorer 3 seasons in a row. And it's basically, they've been left unreplaced. No one has come in to replace them. And you look at it and it's like, okay, well, you've got Tell, you've got Mwani, and then who's the supposed Brennan replacement? Maybe I guess you could play Odebear there, but then you've got one other 10. It's just, the squad is so clearly poorly assembled that selling any player, especially a player who is as important in a sense as Brennan Johnson, even if he wasn't playing all the time, because it's an option, right? But I don't know, I look at the disorganization of the club. I feel like it's something that we've said for so long. I mean, it goes back even probably further than what I'm about to mention, but it goes back for me to when we sold Moussa Dembele. And we basically haven't signed a decent centre mid since. Obviously, we signed a few players, but none of them have had the impact that we had hoped. Same with Christian Eriksen, same with Dele. All these players were still waiting for someone to come in and replace them. It goes back to Kyle Walker, for God's sake. It was almost at the point where we were going to replace Kyle Walker with Kyle Walker. We replaced Bale with Bale. So it's the history of the Tottenham, I'm afraid. So it's frustrating. And look, they say they're the new owners, right? The Lewis family, who are just Enoch, not even 2.0. They've been there the whole time. And they're the ones who have control of the purse strings, not Levy, even though obviously Levy had his faults. And I'm not here saying, clamoring for Levy back. I'm just saying, he was answering to someone, and they were that someone. So.
Well, people want Levy back because they know he would be more ruthless with the manager situation, whereas the Enoch crew or the Lewis family are showing that maybe they're not. What I do find funny is I'm going to give Lewis family the not benefit of the doubt, because I'm not sure if I actually do fall in that line, but they are trying to revamp themselves and are trying to rebrand themselves by the looks of things. So I'm going to give them this window, in the summer window, to potentially show that. But to your point, maybe they do almost seem like, if you've seen this before, like a restaurant that is actually under the same ownership, and that just sort of changes the sign and sort of maybe changes the menu a little bit, and then pretends as if they're a whole new restaurant when you can tell it's just the same one before that was failing. So I wonder if that's the case of the Lewis family right now, rebranding themselves as the Lewis family and not just the Enoch investment group by the looks of things. But let's go on to maybe a bit after the Johnson situation. The previous Spurs manager, I'm going to go to Sam on this one, was blamed for not getting the most out of the squad and the players by Spurs fans. Now under Thomas Frank, the common argument I see, and you probably have seen, Sam, is that the players now are just simply not good enough. So just to make things clear, is there no point in bringing in another manager because they wouldn't actually do that much better if the squad is that poor? And if the squad is as poor as people say it is Frank overachieving then this season?
So it's a tough one because I feel like the easy answer is to say that it falls somewhere in the middle, because I genuinely think it does. I think that was probably, other than the fact that I feel like Ange didn't know how to coach midfielders, and his ethos on midfielders being able to play anywhere in the midfield, not needing a specialized player, that for me was insane. But my biggest criticism of him was the fact that I felt like, yes, the squad was poor, but he wasn't getting the most out of players that had excelled, like Son, for example, who had never been an out-and-out touchline winger, had always been an inside forward, second striker kind of player, and was basically being sacrificed for fullbacks. So I was looking at it based on the fact that our attacking players were having to play defensively, and our defensive players, who were second-string defensive players for most of the season, were playing up front. With Frank, one of the biggest reasons I was keen to bring him in is because I thought he's going to get the most out of these players. He's got the most out of the Brentford team. He knows the league. I respect him as a coach. He'll come in and he'll steady the league form. So far, it's been pretty topsy-turvy. I can see improvements, obviously, in the defense. I think the reason we're still conceding goals is the fact that we just continuously lose the ball. And if you are forced to defend all the time, you're obviously going to concede at some point. And I feel like because we're so bad at holding onto the ball, he is also getting more criticism for the fact that there's no patterns of play. Because as soon as it goes from the left back to Xavi, for example, he takes a heavy touch or he plays a heavy pass that goes out for a goal kick.
Yeah.
And it's not just Xavi. I'm just using him as an example because there was a lot of times where he was the breakdown in play.
Yeah.
I think that that feeds into the fact that the squad isn't good enough. I think for as long as I can remember, we've had like a set first team and a set second team. And everyone always said the second team, as soon as they play, they're not good enough. I kind of feel like we've lost the impetus of attack from the first team. And now we've got kind of like decent all-round squad players as compared to having like Harry Kane and Son up front and Longley and Ben Davies at the back, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there is something. Like I was speaking to a West Ham fan today at work, and he was telling me what a lot of Spurs fans were saying last season, which was you sign championship players, you end up in the championship because they've signed players like Fernandes, Carl Walker-Peters, Max Kilman, and they hate them. And I was saying, like, it's not really. I personally don't think that those players can't make the step up, and it's the same with young players, right? But you have to have players sprinkled in around that have experience, and unfortunately, we just don't have that. Especially losing our star players over the last 2-3 seasons. We're just kind of an average club now who doesn't really have any names that get you off your seat. And it needs to happen in the window. And even if they don't buy players that specifically Frank wants, I want them to bring in players that elevate the ceiling of the club, and raise the floor rather than just coming in and, playing a few games here and there and swapping out with Wilson or swapping out with Tell or whatever, So I just feel like the club really need to show some sort of intent, whether or not it's backing Frank, it doesn't really matter. And I also don't think that as much as I don't necessarily want Frank to go, and I feel like he deserves a bit more time, I also don't disagree that there are other managers out there that could come in. My concern is just we're in the middle of the manager merry-go-round now. Obviously, Chelsea have just wrapped up a manager, but you've got
I saw you make that
United and Liverpool. Apparently, I've seen rumours that they're looking at sacking Slot. I know, obviously, we should be aiming for managers higher than a West Ham caliber, but West Ham might sack Nuno. There could be 3 or 4 vacancies by the time we sack Frank, where there's a lot of options for managers, and we might have to pick up the scraps. That's my concern.
It's almost like we've done it if we were to do it now, it's almost like we've done it too late because
exactly.
There's all these other bigger sharks now circling, looking for a top quality manager. And as much as I painfully have to say it, they will look to go to these better squads and clubs than what we have at the minute. And also just knowing that Spurs, as we know, is a manager graveyard compared to some of these other clubs, at the minute. So it'd be nicer if we found ourselves like we kind of did with Conte, where it was kind of like no other clubs were really sacking their managers. It was kind of early on in the season, when Nuno got sacked, and then we brought in Conte because I don't think there was maybe one other club. I think it was Man United that had sort of sacked their manager by that stage or something like that. So it's just made it a lot easier to bring in actually a high caliber candidate because there weren't really a lot of places for top quality coaches to go. Jerome, I'll throw this question at you and then we'll also take the super chat. But Sean Maddox is answering my question about is Thomas Frank overachieving if the squad is as terrible as people make it out to be. He's saying the squad isn't good enough, but neither Ange nor Frank got enough out of the squad either. Almost a bit of a very neutral answer from Sean there. So what do you make of that? And then also, after you finish answering that, we'll take JB's super chat here as well together.
Look, with the squad itself, I don't think this squad is not good enough. It's not a great squad, but I can't say this is a terrible squad. It's a decent squad. With the players we've got, this is a decent squad. My issue is if it's a one or two players, but you can see a drop off or something like that, then it's on the player. Okay, you can say that player is not good enough. Like for example, the selling of Johnson showed us that Johnson was not good enough for this club because every time he came on the pitch, lazy runs, lazy passes, everything was not good. But when it comes to a collective, right, if the team as a whole, you can see a drop off in the team performance as a whole, then it is on the manager. Because you can't, from my perspective, is Frank is not able to motivate them or get the best out of them. Again, with the issues we had last season, saying we didn't have enough proper attacking players, the club has addressed it, brought players for us to say, Kulu is injured, Madders is injured. We are bringing like for like. Xavi, Kudus, and Moani. We brought like for like with them. So if you're not able to get those prolific players to play for your team properly, it is a managerial issue. It has to be on the manager because you can't tell me that all three of them, apart from Kudus is had like some good games because now he's injured. You can't get the best out of Moani, who's a prolific striker, and you cannot get the best out of the Xavi, who's been like tearing the Bundesliga apart. People can go and say, oh, but he's from the Bundesliga. He needs time and things like that. VDV came in and get the dog in there. Started. He didn't need time. He didn't need anything like that. He started going already. So things like he's coming for the Bundesliga, needs time. I'm not buying that. To me, it is like something. It has to be a manager because if you look at all the stats, even for Bentancur, right? See, the last season's Bentancur progressive passes was about 5.92. This season, Bentancur progressive passes is about 2.92. It's about half as much as progressive passes that he's done. So it's not a player's drop off because if you look at a whole list of progressive passing for all of it, we have about 11 players that have above 5 point something, right? Now, all of them are like really low. And even of those 11 players last season, Kulu and Madders was even below them in terms of progressive passing. So all of them were just like thinking progressive passing. And now this season, you're telling me that all of the stats are now being reduced to a drastic level. And Xavi is now the highest one currently with progressive passing. So if you're telling me that those players are not good enough, then come on, we cannot just go and say that those players are not good enough. They are decent. I'm not saying that they are not this great team, like they're going to tear things up, but with a proper structure, proper tactics, not crazy tactics going like kamikaze, like Ange, or right now, like fully back, like coward, like really, really negative tactics. If you have somebody who gives them balance, give them saying, you defend as a team, you attack as a team, I can guarantee you we'll get the best out of his team. Yes, you can have your Richardsons, but you can say he's not good enough, he's not a good striker enough. That's fine, but it's just one out of the tens. Because this team has got, to me, they have got a good starting 11. It just doesn't have enough depth. What's coming from the bench to change the game? Right now, we got nothing. Until Kulu and others are back and Solanke is back, we can't say we don't have any game changers, but we come off from the pitch and change the game. So, yeah, to me, if it's just one or two players, I would say the players are not good enough. But it's a whole team as a whole. We need to look at the manager. So yeah, that's pretty much my view on this one.
I know I'm in the same boat. We'll just take this from JB McCauley and we'll continue on the same point that you're bringing up, Jerome. He's saying Langa out, Sherrington and Vinay are doing nothing. Fundamentally, the organization is broken by bankers who don't understand our culture. And then he also adds that Frank's tactics are rubbish. He's covering a lot of points here, JB. With Johan Langa, I think what's funny about him is that he has brought in a lot of potential. And I think some of those potential signings, I'm fans of some of them. I don't mind, Matisse Tell. I don't mind Odebear. Like Archie Gray has some real quality there. But you would say the consistent beat in sort of his signings have been that they're all signings for the future. And he's also spent a lot of the money in the transfer budget on those ones for the future. It's not like many of them, apart from Bergvall, you would say, have come in really that cheaply. So I think with Johan Lange is that he's brought in talented players, but none of them are exactly for the here and now. You need to have that healthy mix, especially for a club like Spurs, of guys that are for the here and now, but then also mix in some ones that you can develop behind the scenes or maybe as more squad players that are young and talented and can learn off more of those guys for the here and now. But when you really look at the Spurs team, it is still an exceptionally young side, and it feels like we're not really bringing in the managers, to be honest, that know how to work with maybe a young and inexperienced team. I'm not sure if Ange was really that guy. I'm not even sure if Thomas Frank is really that guy either, to sort of work with a young but talented squad, maybe a naive squad, if you will. And then also when it comes to Vinay and Sherrington, like I said, probably stupidly of me, I'm just going to try to give them sort of not a pass, but I'm going to sort of look at this window and the next window and then make my mind up. It's hard for me to make my mind up about them when they haven't really had much of a chance to actually show or flex anything to show that they are any different from the previous regime. But I wouldn't be surprised in a year's time if I'm on the exact same page as you. And then when it comes to Frank's tactics being rubbish, listen, I kind of agree. I don't mind even the defensive brand of football, but the way that it's being done under Frank, I just can't even tolerate, even as a guy that likes the occasional terrorist football. We're going to take some comments here, and thank you for the support, by the way, JB. And if anyone wants to get in on the conversation, you're welcome to do what he's done there. It does help out the channel. Dermot, I'm going to throw some of these comments at you here, and we're just sort of going to continue on this conversation of if the players are terrible, is Thomas Frank then overachieving? Dave, Big Daddy Dave, is coming to the house, even though he's very sick with the flu. He's still able to listen. And he's saying, could it be that all the players are looking average because the system and the instructions are average? He's saying an unpopular opinion is that Frank didn't get the most, actually, out of the Brentford players there. Their recruitment model is set up to buy players that are undervalued in the market, and their stats will show that. And I think if you look at how good Brentford are this season, you could make maybe an unpopular opinion, but you could make a case, with how well Keith Andrews is doing. Maybe Thomas Frank was even holding them back to some extent. And then just this last comment here, AK Sheg saying, no sane person would argue that this squad is good enough to challenge for a title, but it should be good enough to be challenging for the top 5. Do we automatically make the top 5? Maybe not, but we should at least be challenging. Where do you lie on all this, Dermatron? Is Thomas Frank overachieving or underachieving?
He's rarely underachieving, though on the flip side of that, I don't think the squad's good enough. We did a show before Christmas on the squad, and the only one player that we probably agreed with that could get into a title challenging team was Mickey van der Ven. We thought Romero was up there as well, but you look at the squad as a whole and you go through it player by player. Yes, there's a lot of young players in there, but there's not much experienced players in there. So I think Thomas Frank, as an experienced manager, should be doing a hell of a lot better than what he's doing. The only thing with Ange last season with the squad was we went on and won something. And I think that is what's overhyped this squad. I think this is what papered over the cracks. Because we did win something with this squad, it's probably made this squad better in people's minds than what it really is. To be honest with you, I think it's years of mismanagement in the squad. It's unbalanced. There's not a lot of depth in it, as Jerome said. And I think also, if we do have a player, say we lose Porro, we've only got one fullback to cover 2 fullback spots. So when we do try to improve the squad or try to bring players in as backups, we don't do it. So it's a combination of Thomas Frank not getting enough out of the team that he's got with his bad tactics, formations, playing this sort of, as you call it, terrorist football, Jack. Boring football. B, the squad assembly has been poor. So whoever put the squad, and that's down to Paratici, it's down to Lang as well. the way they put the squad together was poor. And B, some of these players aren't good enough. They're just sitting there picking up a wage, and they're not good enough. Instead of buying experienced players and sprinkling it with young players, we've assembled a squad of young players and tried to sprinkle it with experienced players, which doesn't work. So, I think Thomas Frank is underachieving. I think whoever put the squad together badly put it together. So, I don't care. You could get Xavi to come in, and he couldn't make this squad any better. You could get probably Jurgen Klopp to come in, and he wouldn't win anything with this squad because it's been so badly put together over the last 5 or 6 years. And you can blame plenty of director of footballs, blame Levy all you like, but it's down to the bad management, bad scouting, and bad direction Tottenham have gone in. We're now seeing the price of it.
Well, if Jurgen Klopp or Pep and these guys couldn't do any better, then does that mean that Frank is technically overachieving, Vermatron?
What's he overachieving, Jack? We're sitting in 13th.
Yeah, so then Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, arguably better managers, right? They would get more out of the current set of players.
Yeah, probably, but I think we've all got to realise we're a mid-table team. We're not a team that's going to get top 5. We're a mid-table team, and we've got a mid-table manager. And I don't think this squad is capable of getting us. I mean, I'd be happy with Conference League football next season. I think that's achievable this year, the way the league's going. But apart from that, he's not achieved. Thomas Frank is not achieving anything with this squad because the squad's so poor. So you've got a poor manager and a poor squad. Maybe another manager could achieve more with this squad, but I don't think Thomas Frank is, because Thomas Frank's tactics and the way he plays football, the players are just bored with it, and the players are not good enough to do it anyway. So I think we're in a complete mess, an absolute hole. And if we get Conference League football, I think that is the most this squad could achieve.
Just want to throw this one at you, Sam, from AK Shags. I'm kind of in a similar boat here where you're looking at all these teams that are above us in the league. I wouldn't say that they have better squads than we do. He's saying we have a better squad than Sunderland, better one than Fulham, better one than Everton. I'd say we have a better one than Brighton. I'd still make the case we have a better one than Fulham or Brentford as well. If we were above those teams, we'd be sitting around 7th, 6th position in the league at this moment in time, to be honest. So it does show that some of these other managers are getting the most out of maybe arguably similar levels of squad, if not worse levels of squad. And also just this comment as well that I have from Shawnee Maddox. He says, we don't have a Kane, a Son, a Bale, or a Modric level players. I wouldn't say those squads either have players of that caliber, but they're somehow able to challenge and around the higher ends of the table. Even Aston Villa, how many world-class players do even Aston Villa have, in their team? Look at what Unai Emery is able to get out of the team that they have, or even Chelsea. Like Chelsea, apart from Cole Palmer and maybe Caicedo, how many real world-class players are even in their team? They have a lot of players, but how many of them are actually world-class? So all I'm saying is you're looking at other managers getting the most out of their respective squads.
Yeah. I mean, what I will say is Chelsea are only 5 or 6 points above us, right?
Let me check on that for you just to confirm. Yeah, 4 points above us.
Yeah, so they're basically their win against us ahead of us. It's a 6-pointer, right? So they went 3, we stayed the same. I don't disagree with what you're saying about our squad isn't as bad as us, but I think that speaks to the level of the league this season. In terms, the fact that you're seeing so many managerial changes, I think, by January, I think just shows what the level of the league all around is, other than a handful of teams. And that's not to say the league is bad. I think it's just the bigger teams aren't as competitive as they have been, and the smaller teams have leveled up.
Yeah,
the money has helped them level up. The teams that have now been in the league for the last 5 or so years have been able to start building that money and building players in. I think when you look at teams like Sunderland, and I think this goes back to one of the points that I made before about the level of the squad, is you look at someone like Xhaka, right? And maybe he's not the greatest example because there's probably quotes out there of me, calling Xhaka shit, for example. But the way that he's playing, and it's the same with Henderson at Brentford. They're the experienced head that's helping the team dictate. I don't think that game against us was Xhaka's best game. But I have seen him really take the league by storm this season. Maybe by storm's a bit harsh. I don't want to over praise any ex-Arsenal players, but I just don't feel, as you said, I think as well, Jack, we've all said it, we've got a squad built on potential, but that potential is not here. So while I agree with Jerome about the squad isn't as bad as people are making it out to be, I do think that it's still poor because of the fact that none of those players have reached their potential yet, because they haven't had a chance, because it's so early in their careers. I think you've got to look at the change over the last 3 seasons in comparison to the 10 seasons that came before that, right? I mean, other than Ben Davies, every single player from that Champions League team is gone. And it's taken a long time for that to happen. But in the summer of last season, we're all praising everyone for getting rid of 5 or 6 dead wood players, right? Whether or not we replace them is a different story. But, we got rid of players that people were complaining about, saying that they weren't fit to wear the badge. They were never good enough to be here. We've overpaid. They just need to get gone. We need to stop wasting time with loans and just get them out. And they did that. And I think that you said, Jerome, about if it was 1 or 2 players, you could understand it, but it's also up to the manager to motivate these players. If it's more of a collective, which I also agree with. But then I look at, for example, I'll go back to Ange's tenure, right? We got 1 point in 8 matches in the league against Chelsea and Arsenal. Those should be the easiest games to get the players up for, right? The fans should be able to do that alone, but the manager should be drilling it into them every day of that week. It's any other game, but it's not any other game. We need to give the fans the performance. We need the win, but the fans need the performance to show that you're fighting for the badge. And it's not just that, because I can't remember. Maybe Conte was that 3-0 we had at home was the last time I really saw a bite in those games where we actually have turned up and not just gone on the field as 11 individuals.
I mean, you're right. With Ange and Frank have not been able to, even in those derby games. Ange's record in the derbies was atrocious. And Thomas Frank's, by the looks of things, isn't going to be that much better. But but then this is Dave's point, saying the question is, do most of these clubs have better managers if their squads are technically worse than ours? And that's kind of the point I'm trying to harp in on. I don't want you to agree with me if I'm not trying to force you to agree with me, but this is the point that I try to make out of, if everyone says our squad is so terrible, then if you look at the other teams that are just so much further ahead of us and seem to be so much better than us by the way they're playing, does that just technically mean they have better managers?
So I'm kind of conflicted, because I'm not one of these people that's going to die on the Frank Hill, right? If it's not going well, I'm not going to, sink with him. I'll abandon ship like the rat that I am. But again, I'm not over. I was fairly happy when Frank came in, but he wasn't my first choice. It was something that I embraced, the concept of Frank coming in, rather than being let's go get Frank. And I feel these other teams as well, they are definitely, the managers are performing better. Whether or not that makes them a better manager or not, I think is kind of up for debate, because it's all form based. And I feel when people talk about Frank's form and whether he should be back in the summer, in the January, what has he done to show that he should be back? As much as I agree with that, he's brought in on the back of the club identifying his leadership of Brentford. And I think that that is what he's done to prove it, right? He's now left a different to come to a different club without those players that he's nurtured into what he needs. And these 6 months have been, I guess, for him about trying to figure out what kind of image he wants to mold the team into. And I'm sure we can all agree probably every single Spurs fan out there, we're still waiting to see any semblance of a face like appear in a picture. It's been a tough watch. It has.
Oh, oops. Maybe give him a sec, see if he comes back.
Yeah.
Very funny comment from Tango bin al-Shid. Where is it? So don't abandon ship. Just make Frank walk the plank. Continue maybe where you left off, Sam. But yeah, we did cut off. I did love Tango's comment here just after you said that as well. Just make Frank walk the plank. You don't need to go down. You don't need to find a lifeboat.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying though. I'll abandon the ship and he can go down with it.
Yeah, well, every Spurs fan leave the ship. We'll just create a new one. We'll just go back to port. Find a new ship to get on top of. But this is kind of just to come in on this. Like, I'm happy to discuss like whether the squad is actually good enough to be challenging even for top 5. Like, I'm willing to have that conversation. I don't think there's one right answer or another on that. But like where we are and the type of football that we are watching, like I understand like we are only so many points off of these sides that are in like 6th, 5th position, 7th position, 8th position. Like, I get it. Like, we're only so many points off of, but watching the way we've been playing, I have even the biggest happy clapper of them all feels like I have no real belief that we can actually compete with these teams because we've lost to them, first of all, but then, it looks like they are able to chip away and getting results more often than we have. What is it? Like 2 wins in the last 10 or so games, under
13.
Thomas Frank. Like, it's 13 games. Like, it's just as
2
much
wins
as we
last
look
13.
close enough to them, I don't have any semblance of confidence that we actually will keep up with these teams, even if it is a bit of a slow sort of churning league in terms of actually gathering up points. And I think just the point I want to sort of, in the best of my ability, sort of have everyone shake hands on is, even if you don't think this squad is top 5 capable, surely it should be one that should be challenging in and around the top 10, like Brighton are, like Brentford are, like Fulham are, like Everton are, these sort of sides. Like, and if that's the case, if we all agree that we have, to a degree, maybe some areas, maybe not, maybe some areas we do, but if we can all agree that we do have, for the most part, better players in those teams, then it just has to come down to the quality of the manager. Clearly, the manager is not getting the most out of the players that he has available. And I would say that was the same case with the previous manager. The previous manager, also, in my opinion, was not technically getting the most out of the players that he had available. So that's why I've sent in those Chad memes, into the group chat where I just sort of lie on the boat of the last 2 managers just simply haven't been good enough to get the most out of the squad that we have available. I'm not trying to make the case that we are deserving of top 5, top 4, or anything like that. But I feel like we are a good enough team to be challenging in around 6th and 7th position. Like, we have 2 world-class players in Romero and Van de Ven. I look at some of these other teams, like I mentioned with Aston Villa, like maybe apart from Morgan Rogers, like who is actually a world-class player like in that Aston Villa team? And Morgan Rogers has only just come on to the scene in the last year or 2. Yes, Chelsea have a million good players, but how many world-class players do they have on the Kane, Bale, Modric level? That's where I'm also a bit torn when people say we don't have any Kanes or Bales or Modriches anymore. It's like, yeah, I can agree with that. But look at the teams that are above us, that are playing much better football than us, that are getting more results than us. They don't have players like that either, and yet they're still able to get results on a more regular basis than us. And that's kind of where I'm at, to be honest, Sam, and the rest of the panel. It's just clearly the manager could be doing better is basically my point.
Yeah.
I just
one thing I wanted to say in terms of the team, like we're saying, like it's a young team and everything like that, right? We don't need to look like too far away. Let's look at Poch team with Kane, Son, Dele Alli, Eriksen, and all of that. Looking at the age demographic of that Poch team, we had the youngest team in the league during that time. We had only like Dembele, Vertonghen, and I think it was Kyle Walker. That was the oldest players we had in this team, right? Even though it was a very inexperienced team, that team, once they started clicking, started challenging week in and week, every single season, challenging against the big ones. So with a young team, with a team of players that we never heard about before, Poch was able to get the best out of them, make them click, make them this unstoppable machine that was actually challenging every season. So how can we say now, like, if we take this team now, right, and we have like a Pochettino managing that team, I can guarantee you that team will be a lot more higher up the pitch, up the table that we should be now. Because he will get the best out of those players. Even though we're saying those players are not good enough, I can guarantee you Poch would get the best out of them, and we should be at least 4th, 5th, 6th, challenging, or even challenging. Because we need somebody that can go and wrap himself around those players and go, you are good enough to play for me, and I will make you a world-class player. We don't have any of those managers that are doing that right now. And with as much as I want to give respect to Thomas Frank, he's not the kind of manager that will go and say that to those players and give them conviction, but they can be world-class players. He's not the kind of manager that will do that. So I believe that we have like a Poch-like manager that can do something like that. That team, the current starting 11, will be a lot more higher than it should be. So yeah, that's my take on this one.
Sam, I think you want to come in. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can't, to be fair, it's kind of builds on what Jerome was saying, or on the argument anyway.
Yeah. Well said, Jerome.
I agree with a lot of what you said there, Jerome. Because I think that the crux of our issue is that our managers aren't getting the most out of the players, whether or not those players are good enough to compete for major honours. Yeah. They're not getting enough out of the players. I've watched from that Pochettino team that was built. I've watched us try to. I feel like that was when you look back on it, that was an unbelievable first team. That was a league-winning first team, but we had no bench, and we had no consistent players on the bench. You know, you had players like Lucas Moura who could come in for a game or two and play really well, and then disappear for 10 games. Yeah. And I think that over the last sort of 7 years, we've watched the club try and build up the overall squad, the level of the squad. But the problem is, we've lost Kane, and we've now lost Son, and all of the other players that were around. Don't get me wrong, I think we've got when our first team defense is fit, I think we've got a defense that can rival most teams in the league. I think the problem is we've got so many players that are good for the squad, but no one who really enriches the first team right now. And I look at to go back to the stuff about Brentford and not Brentford, Sunderland and Fulham and whatever. Our overall squad might be better than ours, but it's so unbalanced. It's kind of like the England conundrum, I feel, where maybe not quite the exact the same, but Southgate was always trying to figure out how to get all these players in their best positions, and people were playing out of positions, and he was trying to get all the players in rather than playing to his system. And I feel like at the moment we're kind of in this limbo where we don't really have the players that can influence the game up front in a way that we need them to, and they're not clicking with each other yet. Hopefully that will come. Maybe another manager could get that to come sooner. But for me, overall, I just think that we've got such a bottom heavy squad and nothing at the top that really needs to be addressed. I mean, we've been trying to sign wingers for ages. I know obviously we brought in Kudus, but now you sold Brennan, so you're back to square one, basically. One winger in, one winger out. So we just need to really, over the next few transfer windows, bring in players that, as I said, lift the ceiling and the floor of the club, rather than just coming in to, as Dermot said, collect the wage or just be a body on the bench like our youth team goalkeepers.
I just wanted to finally add, and then I want to let Dermot in because he's been very patient. I'm coming from, again, the expectations that have already been lowered, I think, going into the season under Frank. I think we've had to, as Spurs fans, accept that we're in this huge transitional phase. Even under Ange, I felt like we were in a transitional phase, and we kind of knew that the players of the Kane and the Sons and the Bales are all gone. We just don't have these world-class players anymore. We don't have these title ambitions anymore like we might have done under Poch. So I think a lot of us, including myself, beginning of the season, I was predicting around 8th position, 7th position. That's where I think we should be challenging. That's where I'm basing, my criticism off of Frank off of. It looks like to me, even though Sam is right, probably being a little bit hyperbolic, and that we aren't that many points away from 7th or 8th position, but we don't look nearly good enough to be finishing in those spots right now. And that's just from my seeing eye test. So that's where I'm coming at, where I feel like majority of fans will agree that we have a squad capable of enough of competing around 7th, 8th position. Yes, we could absolutely have deeper conversations about can it do that much better than that? Sure. But clearly Thomas Frank is not getting anywhere close to what already were very lowered expectations going into the season. Like the bar, I do feel like at this beginning stage of the season was already pretty low, and he's found a way to go even lower than that. And that's where I'm kind of coming at it when it comes to the squad and everything about it. But Dermotron, you've been quiet for a while. Anything you wanted to add to any of this about Thomas Frank and the players?
I get what Jerome was saying about the team under Pochettino, but Pochettino isn't here. Thomas Frank's our manager. His job is to inspire these players to go and do a job. I mean, the 16-17 team under Poch was an average year of 23.4 years. That was the average age. This age, I think this team is slightly older, not by much, I don't think. But Thomas Frank is supposed to be the manager. He would inspire me. I don't know, would he inspire anyone in the chat? But if you're a player and you're looking at the manager and you need to be inspired by him, then there's something wrong. You should have it within yourself to inspire yourself. I want to go out on that pitch and I want to do better than my teammate. And that is the problem. This squad goes out and they don't inspire themselves. The manager can't inspire them. So they think, okay, we're just going to draw against Wolves, or we're going to lose against Bournemouth, or we're going to go and beat 3-0 against Nottingham Forest. Players should be able to inspire themselves to play better. It shouldn't take a manager to do it. A manager is, I would say, 40% of inspiring you. 60% should be yourself. And Thomas Frank is not an inspiring manager. You can give Ange all his faults, but I tell you one thing, he would inspire a squad. He inspired that team to win the Europa League with his team talks and how we went about it. He was a crap manager. He wasn't great, to be fair, but he inspired me. You see some of his videos, he would inspire you to do better. And I just think Thomas Frank, for me, wouldn't inspire anyone. Could somebody else inspire this team? I don't think they could. I don't think even Poch would. I don't think Poch wouldn't I think Poch would come in, and I think half the squad would be gone in the summer. We're within 2 transfer windows. Because he would look at the squad and think, this is not a squad good enough to compete at the top end of the table. Jack is right, top 8. That's it. Conference League, maybe Europa League, but we're not good enough for top 4, and we're not good enough to challenge. And that's down to years of mismanagement of the squad. But for me, Thomas Frank, Jack, it doesn't inspire anyone. But as a player, I think as a person, you should be able to inspire yourself to do better and prove to people I am better.
I just want to push you on this, Dermo, because I am agreeing with some of your points, but it's hard to tell where you lie on this. Like, do you think he is overachieving or underachieving with these players? Because you sort of are also saying that Pochettino and these guys wouldn't do that much better, or they would not be able to inspire these players, like you just said there. Like, so if that's the case, then you would lie in the boat that the players aren't good enough, no matter who we have in.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said it earlier. I said I do think he is underachieving with some of the good plays he's got. But I think the point I was trying to make, sorry, I'm not great at making points clear sometimes, so I do apologize. But the point I was trying to make was, I think as a player, you should be able to make yourself better. If the manager's not doing it for you, if the manager can't inspire you, or the manager can't, he did inspire Johnson to leave big time. But if a manager can't inspire you, then I think you have to inspire yourself. So I'm not great sometimes to making my points clear, Jack. Sorry. So
no, I now changed my mind about Frank. I totally forgot that he did inspire Johnson to leave, just like Ange inspired Dyer to leave. So I'm actually thankful for them, but for any of that, to be fair. Probably now my 2 favorite managers in history, and getting those guys to leave. But that just shows how ridiculous I can be sometimes with my narratives around certain players. I did want to maybe finish up on just a question kind of about tomorrow and some of the games ahead. Xavi Simons is going to be returning to the team. Jerome, with the injury to Kudus, there's a very funny tweet from Billy. I just saw, well, I'm going to plug Sam's Twitter and Dermatron's channel. Billy saying people are stressing too much about the loss of Kudus. He's only going to miss 2 Champions League games, the rest of January, and then all the games in February, which are probably the most crucial ones of the season. So does Thomas Frank need to find a solution there on that right wing? Should he go with Odegaard, Simmons, and then maybe Tell? Should he give Matisse Tell finally a go that he deserves?
I think Del might get a start. He will definitely be starting for those games. I mean, that's what he will need to do. But the thing is, like, he will need Odeberg on the left side. He will not put him on the right side. So I think Tell will be starting there for as a replacement for Kudus until we get somebody. So who knows if we're gonna get someone? But yeah, I think it will be Tell. I'll be starting there. But again, if looking at all of those, I would not be going like, oh, if we lose against Bournemouth, I would not be going, oh, because we missed Kudus or something like that. It would be something really like a horrible mistake that would happen, that we would lose to them or something like this. Because again, I don't believe we are going to lose to them. I believe we're gonna go and draw. It's gonna be a very boring, cagey game, but it's not going to be that exciting game. Especially with Kudus gone, it will be less exciting than ever. But I don't think we'll lose. I think we'll draw. I believe we will draw there, but it will be a very boring draw. But yeah.
Interesting. I think you spoke about earlier, I think, Jerome, about the squad age, right? Just not being of the experience level required. This is interesting from Not Rob, saying the average age was 23.9 last year. Now it's 25, which says a lot. I do feel like this team is, and that's what I mean with the last 2 managers as well. Like, I do feel like the last 2 managers were never managers to work with young players. That's, again, why sometimes the board and the decision making behind the scenes seems all wrong. It's like, if they're going to spend all this money, like 300 million, I think Johan Lange has already spent, on players, and the majority of them are like under the age of 25. You need then to bring in a manager that knows how to work with guys like that. So
look, I think with the board, we're desperately trying to recreate what Poch created within his first 5 seasons. We are desperately trying to recreate this because we are going with this young team, bringing young talent for the future, and hoping they can recreate the same thing that Poch have done. Look, they will not have the same, like a manager with the same caliber as Poch, or somebody that would be willing to work with the youth like Poch did. It's not the same. It will not have that. Look, I do agree with Dermo. It is 60% the player and it is 40% the manager. If you look at Poch, right, we had Moussa Sissoko. When we brought this guy, he was an absolute disaster. Poch took him and said, I will make you a great player. Moving 1 or 2 years later, we were singing the name of Moussa Sissoko. I mean, like, who would have thought Moussa Sissoko, of all players, would have 62,000 people singing his name? I mean, that's some magic that Poch had done with his team. And if we have somebody the same as Pochettino and come in and do the same with those players, I can guarantee you they would be going a lot more higher than they should be right now. And the only issue that we need, like Sam said, what we had with this team doesn't have depth. We lack depth. It's always been the issue with us. We can have a good 11, but the depth that's coming up from the bench is not great. So this is something that we need to address, and we need to address fast. But again, it's just my view that the age demographic that we're trying to bring is the board trying to recreate that Poch era. They are desperately trying to recreate this, but they don't have the correct managers to do that right now. We do not have it. From Mourinho, Conte, and to now Frank, none of them fit to what they want to achieve. None of them. So yeah, that's my view on this one.
That's actually a real good barometer scale to judge whether a manager is getting the most out of his players, is how many songs do the fans have about some of the average or shit players in the team, and Pochettino had a few and was able to get one or two. Thomas Frank needs to do better. Sam, just on the situation that we have with Kudus and Johnson, of course, now being gone, does he need to roll with some sort of version of Xavi Simons, Matisse Tell, and Odegaard?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I thought Tell played pretty well, at least for the first half against Sunderland. I think the reason he dropped off in the second half was because he was tired. You could see he really started to tire, and I think that's also kind of a slight on Frank, because there's been no real reason why Tell hasn't had more minutes than he has. And you feel like Kudus has ended up getting a muscle injury, which I've praised Frank's rotation for this in this regard, that we haven't had those kind of muscle injuries that we were getting so consistently under Ange, but he's played Kudus so much that he's now run himself into the ground, which was kind of similar to what happened with Kulu as well. And if I'm being fair, it actually mirrors it perfectly with Kulu. Kulu was our star of the season for the first half of the season, and then for the second half, until he got injured, he was actually really poor. But I think that's just because he was playing every single game, all the games, and it's not only hard to keep up your performances like that much, but also just physically, mentally drained, especially when you're going out and losing so many games as well. So I do feel for Kudus, although he is frustrating me at the moment, and I feel like he just needed to lift his head up and actually play some passes rather than dribbling past 10 players and then losing the ball. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, with Wilson as well, I think that he's been performing well in the last few games. I've seen people saying that they didn't think he was that good, but I actually thought in the Brentford game, I was really confused why Frank took him off instead of taking off Kudus, who again played the 90 minutes and had been pretty woeful the whole game. I guess the problem is we're having to lower our own expectations and our bars in order to justify the performances of not only the team collectively, but the players, to be like, oh, we just saw Odegaard take on two players and play a pass to someone's feet. Yes, we haven't seen that for a while, So I feel like we've lowered our expectations and what we actually expect, what these players should be doing, because of how poor it's been for the last year, let's say, last 6 months of Ange and this 6 months so far.
I would agree that the standards have been lowered when it comes to some of the players, especially in the forward line. But I'd agree with you. I actually thought Odegaard and Tell were kind of our best forwards, in the last game against Sunderland. And I thought they actually offered the most, really. And if Richarlison just knew how to pass to a teammate, I think Odegaard actually probably would have scored, and Kolo probably would have scored as well. And I think even Kolo actually didn't have that great of a game, to be perfectly honest, either. And also agree with Kudus. So, crazy enough, even though it's not very high standards, I do think Tell and Odegaard need to play these next two games because they looked more capable actually than some of the other players. But maybe with Tell and Odegaard, they look lively, they look exciting, they sort of get you out of your seat, but they don't seem to have any end product actually with finishing off any moves, to be perfectly honest. Whereas strangely enough, Richarlison does, even though he's pretty awful to watch. Dermotron, any final words from yourself here, my friend? Thanks for filling up the panel tonight.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. Look, I have to agree with all you. I think he will start with Tell and Odegaard. I think Odegaard on the right, Tell on the left. I enjoyed seeing Tell in the first half. I thought he was really refreshing. He was attacking his fullback. He got a few good crosses in as well. I think he did tire, but I think he starts tomorrow night. He's got to. And with Odegaard's one of these players. He does have the space. He does have the talent. He just needs to, I think, just look at his end product. Once he sorts that out, he's going to be one hell of a winger. He really will. And he's young as well. So this again goes down to Thomas Frank and what he does in training about inspiring these players to become better. And when you've got them at a young age, you've got to nurture them, but you also got to push them as well. And this is where Poch probably would be better coming in, because Poch would push these young players. He would make them feel that you're part of the family, you're part of my plans. And that was the one thing with the Poch team. They were all in it together. Right or wrong with Ange, the players were all in it together. Under Frank, we're not in it together. It seems to be plenty of individuals, no team unity, no team spirit. But tomorrow night is vital. Look, I think Spurs will get a win tomorrow night. I think we'll get a 1-0 win. It's going to be boring to watch, but I think we will get a win. And then we've got to beat Villa on Saturday. But yeah, I start with telling Odebaran, whoever thought we'd be praising Richarlison? Whoever thought that they would
I don't even know if we are. I think it's like the Johnson. It feels like the exact same conversations where like you have to acknowledge the stats, but at the same time, like your eyes are bleeding, whenever you're watching him. So it's one of those.
It is. But look, thanks for having me on again, Jack. Really appreciate it. And big up to Sam and Jerome as well, and everyone in the chat.
Yeah. Thank you, Dermotron. Thank you, Jerome and Sam, for making this evening possible. And hopefully you guys did enjoy the conversation. Also, probably thanks to Tyler, because he sort of gave me some good inspiration to come up with the questions for tonight around the quality of the squad and everything, because I was racking my brain what we'll be chatting about tonight. And I think that was a good conversation. So everybody do as well. Subscribe to Dermotron's channel, THFC Till We Die. Follow Sam on Twitter as well. Do thank Jerome as well for making this show possible tonight. We'll see you all tomorrow for pre-match build-up. I'll have a predicted lineup out for you guys. Hopefully I get it right. There are only so many players really to pick from anyway, so I really do hope I get it right. And then also we'll see you guys for the watch-along as well tomorrow against Bournemouth, a much must-win game at this stage. I'm probably losing my words because I'm also actually a bit under the weather like Dave, and I probably need to get another vitamin C injection into me at this stage. But everybody, smash the like button, please, on the way out, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.